10. Uluslararası İnşaatta Kalite Zirvemizin Kentsel Geleceğe Doğru başlıklı ilk oturumuna geçiyoruz. İlk oturumun moderasyonunu Novusens Akıllı Şehirler Enstitüsü Kurucu Ortağı Sayın Berrin Benli yapacak. Kendisini alkışlarınızla sahneye davet etmek istiyorum ve sözü kendisine bırakıyorum. Kolay gelsin efendim. Teşekkür ederim. Hoş geldiniz.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Dear participants, thank you so much for coming. It's a great pleasure for us to be with you today. So before getting started, we would like to thank IMSAT for their kind invitation to this summit, and also Kale Group for providing generous support and also hosting this panel session. All right, over the course of next 60 minutes, 1 hour, we will be discussing, talking on how to fight with climate crisis or climate change through smart and sustainable solutions. So we have great speakers from different countries, from different regions, and they're all empowered, very strong women leaders, and they are also the country chairs, the members of G100 Global Initiative and Network, which is a group of 100 women leaders around the world, and in the Smart and Sustainable Cities chapter or wing, which is led by Ms. Zeynep Bodur Okyay, who is the president and CEO of Kale Group of Companies, and also the global chair of this wing or chapter. All right, let me invite them, first introduce them and invite them to the stage one by one. Our first speaker is from Israel, Ms. Naomi Tsur. She's the chair of Israel Urban Forum, and she's the founder and chair of Jerusalem Green Fund. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage. Welcome again. Please have your seat. And our second speaker is from Spain, Ms. Veronica Ramirez del Valle. I hope I have pronounced your name appropriately. She is the operations director of Smart City Cluster of Spain, and also she is the leader of Smart Village Committee. So please join me in welcoming her. Welcome. And our third speaker is from UK, Dr. Delia Dimitriu. She is the director of Smarter Mobility Solutions, the company LLC, and also she worked for European Commission's Director General Research and Innovation on Transport and Mobility within Horizon 2020 program. She also worked for Connected Systems Catapult. So please join me in welcoming her. Welcome. Okay. Before getting started, let's look at how the world is doing on climate change through a video, very short video. Videoyu rica edebilir miyiz? There will be a simultaneous translation. doesn't look good, right? It's frightening. So let me get closer to our speakers. So, as you know, cities and regions continue to find themselves on the front line of climate crisis. So, yet they can't tackle it alone. So, responding to and tackling the climate change emergency requires a very, very robust engagement, right? Robust engagement of whom? All the urban stakeholders from all sectors and industries. So our panel speakers will be sharing their experiences and know-how on how to deal with this climate crisis or climate change or emergencies through smart and sustainable cities solutions. Through how? Through inclusive, through collaborative approaches being taken, and the challenges still need to be taken, still need to be addressed and overcome. So we'll be discussing this topic through 3 rounds of questions, right? In the first round, we'll be focusing on the existing challenges, which is the what part. And in the second round, we'll then be emphasizing the potential solutions regarding these challenges that you have mentioned in the first round, and which is the how part, how to tackle with these solutions, with these potential solutions. And in the final and the third round, we'll have their call to action proposals, which is very, to the point and very solid proposals in 1 or 2 sentences. Okay. Let's start our conversation and discuss this, very, very trendy and very popular and very challenging topic. So, Naomi, as you know, COP27 is approaching, which will happen next week, and COP27 presidency has defined the summit's 4 key goals as mitigation, adaptation, finance, and collaboration, which requires inclusive and active participation from all the stakeholders, all the urban stakeholders. Why? Because as the citizen and stakeholder management play a very critical role in sustainable urban development and also sustainability of our future to fight with this climate crisis. So, this was an intro. Within this context, what do you think? What could be the most top challenges in your view, based on this, very brief information?
First of all, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us to this wonderful meeting. I think we're living in an age of what I would call the urban dilemma. And the urban dilemma results from the fact that though we're now aware of climate change, we're aware of global processes, one thing that is not being taken sufficient notice of is perhaps the most dramatic thing that has happened in the last 120 years, is that whereas at the beginning of the 20th century, 12% of the world were living in cities, by the end of the 21st century, 90% of the world will be living in cities. Now, this is perhaps a really dramatic change, and I'm not sure it's ever in the news. I'm not sure it's being treated in the context that it deserves or the implications that result from it. By the way, a second statistic that is perhaps no less important, that as time goes by, more than 65% of that world population, 90% of which will be in cities, 65% will be senior citizens. That's another thing that has to be taken into account, and I don't think that's being taken notice of either. The world, we're talking about the COP coming up in Sharm el-Sheikh, close to where I live, is a meeting of nations. And one of the failures, perhaps, of the United Nations has been its inability to say the word city. And cities are, in fact, becoming so much more important that there are think tanks in the world that say in the future order, the world will be run by cities, not cities and their hinterlands, it's urban complexes and metropolises, corporate institutions, which are playing a more and more important role in the world, and a new thing that's come up, which is digital communities, because you can be anywhere in the world and be part of a community. So in that situation with those three entities, what happens to the nation state and what is the new order that we're going into? In that situation, I go back to a time when I served as deputy mayor in my city of Jerusalem, and at that point, I noticed a terrible lack of conversation, and we're in a very small country compared with you, and compared with most other countries, but a lack of conversation between local governments and national government. And in fact, the responsibility for addressing climate change is being given to governments. But in fact, the burden of addressing climate change is upon the cities. And a good friend who passed away some time ago, I heard, Jamie Lerner, who was the famous mayor of Curitiba, said, cities are always seen as the problem, but in fact, cities should be the solution, but they are a challenge. And the challenge being that the 17th Sustainable Development Goal, which calls for all organizations, whether global organizations, national organizations, industry, academia, civil society, at the city level, at all levels, to work together. And you might think that that is the easiest goal. It should be the cheapest goal. Put everyone in a room and have them talk to each other and learn from each other, perhaps even listen to each other. It seems to be the hardest goal to achieve. And no problems are going to be solved unless we come down and look each other in the eye and actually have that conversation among all the stakeholders. So the challenge is to have that conversation take place in cities where everyone is, but cities are still often perceived as a place we have to escape from because they may not be healthy enough. They may be polluted. Think of what we do for our fish in our aquarium at home. We make sure they have plants, they have oxygen, they have all the things that they need. Do we do the same for our cities? I'm not sure. I'm not sure we look after our cities as well as we look after the fish in our aquariums. Excuse the example, I'm not comparing people with fish or anything, but you know, it is a kind of example. And that means we have to focus. If everyone's going to be in cities, cities have to be healthy, they have to be inclusive, everyone has to, and in fact, cities could be, although that's going to lead into your next question, could be the easiest arena to do this because everyone is there. Industry is there, academia is there, civil society is there, and if we look at the statistics, 90% of the world are going to be there. So we had better start focusing on cities as the most important thing, not just something that happens to be dotted around here and there in our countries. I don't know whether perhaps I should stop at that. Is my time up?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing, Naomi. You mentioned, you addressed one of the most critical challenges of managing the cities, and as Mr. Vegara has mentioned in his speech, in his presentation.
Perhaps one more point.
Yeah, sure.
One more point that I think is often forgotten also. Everyone, and this is going to be the conversation in the COP, how we transfer from a carbon economy to a green economy, and part of the urban dilemma being the fact that the world depends, for its survival, it thinks it depends on what is called economic growth in a world which has limited resources. And in this talk of sustainable development, which has been the theme of this morning and of this day, we're talking about conserving our resources, perhaps being more careful of how we use them. So you have two opposite directions. The world has to grow and expand, but we also have to tighten our belts, consume less, waste less, be careful of our resources. And the challenge of that transfer to a green economy where we can thrive economically but save our resources, that won't happen if we don't regard the two sides of the coin. One side is regulations, but the other side, and this is where the citizens of all the cities of the world come in, is our personal lifestyle choices. How we live our lives can make a tremendous difference to the carbon footprint of the planet. And if all our lives are going to be in cities, we need to get everyone on board in order to do it. As to the how, that's your next question.
Thank you very much. It's the, core citizen inclusion, the citizen involvement is the heart, it's the core of the challenge. It's the heart of the challenge, is how to involve our citizens and maybe all the residents of the cities into the equation and have the right to, raise their voices, and also including the other urban stakeholders into the equation. Maybe it's the, when we talk about smart governance, smart and sustainable cities governance models or frameworks, smart and sustainable cities governance requires all the urban stakeholders to be part of the equation or the problem. It might be in the form of platforms. As you mentioned, it might be in the form of national urban forums or city-based urban forums, or it might be in the form of other ways, like Mr. Vegara mentioned, like living labs, which also requires the citizen inclusion and puts the citizens at the heart of the model, right? Thank you very much, Naomi. We'll continue with the, potential solutions regarding your, challenges, against your challenges that you mentioned. Thank you. So, Veronica, actually, maybe we should look at the problem because we have similar angles, and maybe Delia can approach the similar problem with the industry or the sector perspective, okay? And Delia, as you know, cities and regions face with decarbonization challenges, particularly the large-scale cities like the ones in UK, and also in Europe, because you're active in European Union countries. This is because of the roles that you had in the past and still. What do you think about the top challenges of UK and also European Union countries about decarbonization of cities and regions, territories, and transforming into carbon neutral and smart cities?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I'm British, but also Romanian, so I'm very attached to this region. And one of the aims of this visit here is to start cooperation. I've learned a lot in UK about practical solutions and learning by doing. Initially, I'm an academic, but then I worked with Connected Places Catapult and Innovate UK to implement solutions. So not to write smart papers, to look at the implementation and then monitor the outcome. I was very impressed about the welcome speeches. Keywords were there: sustainability, Green Deal. I will tackle the European approach as well. And the fact that in the new world, we have to construct smarter, but we need to be smarter together, and these materials are smarter and carbon intensive. So we need to talk about energy efficiency in buildings, and it starts with materials. So in terms of challenges, several challenges in cities, because everything is placing now in cities, and the future seems to bring rural area to cities. So from an initial town, then it's a city, and then metropolitan area, and this is the tendency. In terms of decarbonization, it's a huge challenge. My experience is, and I'm also part of climate action, and I'll be part of the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh as of next week, part of this innovation zone. So my experience is different from Naomi, because we started from bottom up. We realized that the countries will not implement solutions. They have different challenges, let's call it, not political views, but challenges, while industry is stronger. And we have World Bank with us, and we work worldwide to scale up practical solutions and the others to learn by doing. These solutions are green solutions. So this innovation zone is a new zone of COP that started 10 years ago, and it's spreading up because it shows the efficiency. In terms of challenges in cities, of course, it's congestion, of course, it's air quality, and this affects health. So even if we say, okay, I can afford 1 hour in traffic because I have a good job and I have a very good pay, what about your health? Because this is the real problem. And here the construction industry has a solution to have materials that will absorb these ultrafine particles. But probably we'll discuss after this meeting. So air quality and health, which starts with, everything starts from energy. So my experience is that in cities, the sectors are developing and working separately. It's a kind of silos, although you have a mayor and you have a strategy and you have an action plan. Several cities have several strategies. The implementation and the action plans are missing. So the activity, because sometimes the developing of the building construction in a city will take out the strategic thinking of developing the city in a sustainable way. And I give you an example in Cluj-Napoca. So when I've learned this lesson from UK to avoid in Central Eastern Europe mistakes from the Western part, I said, okay, in terms of mobility, we have trams, we have trolleybuses, so energy already, infrastructure is in place. What happened with Cluj-Napoca, a Romanian city, heart of Transylvania? It developed like a spider because of the economic opportunities. So economic opportunities, good jobs, well paid, will bring people together. And then they forget about planning in a sustainable way, because sustainable urban mobility planning, for instance, is extremely important. It is a concept that needs to be implemented. It was developed in Brussels. It was implemented in different cities, but how? They've done the survey, they've done a report, they hired a consultant with the mayor, finished, it's done, we have it. They didn't implement it. And there's a problem, congestion, and as I said, air quality. So then these sectors, we have mobility, which seems to be worldwide the most difficult sector to be decarbonized. And I'm part of mobility. I started as aviation, and then I now integrated urban mobility, including waterborne. And then I moved to cities. And in fact, you have mobility, you have energy efficiency in cities, you have the energy. You need to decarbonize the energy. And in fact, I will talk about solutions. You need local-based solutions, but I will explain later. So challenges is lack of communication and stakeholders to work together, a very honest thinking and planning ahead. So it's not only present economic opportunity, because this will impact your health. Everybody living in that city, no matter how rich they are, these ultrafine particles from vehicles are there. And there is a long run to decarbonize the entire mobility. And I'm part of these key players worldwide. Everybody is now impressed about, in a positive way, about electric vehicles, yeah? Well, we know that we have a problem. Now we're talking about hydrogen. There is a problem to implement it, yeah? So we need different solutions to integrate them. But if we have a very solid, sustainable urban mobility plan in terms of the city, and the actors are just thinking about the quality of life of citizens, this will be the key. Because then this sector, starting with the energy, will function You will learn by doing from other cities, because challenges everywhere. I live in Manchester. We have Transport for Greater Manchester. We started to work on this 15 years ago. The British are very practical, so I've learned a lot from them. But now I would like to implement and work with colleagues to teach them the mistakes that they are still now facing because of this unity in strategy, action plan, and implementation. So in fact, my keywords are research, policy, research, planning. So I guess these are the challenges, and I will come with the solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia. You approach the challenges with different angles. Actually, before your, findings and sharing your thoughts about the challenges, Naomi had a similar finding regarding the governance, especially the inclusion of the stakeholders when managing the city, preparing the plans, the strategies and the roadmap. But as you mentioned, it's not easy to, even if you have a great strategy and roadmap that you have developed, it's not easy to implement it. So, and one of the most big challenges is the integration of the sectors or industries, like built environment, like energy, like the other smart mobility and the other industries. So you approach the similar challenge with a different angle, the integration, interdisciplinary approach among the industries and sectors. So thank you very much. And so we'll continue with the potential solutions that you've addressed. Okay, Veronica, there's a very popular, very famous saying nowadays called sustainable is the new smart. So cities look for a variety of solutions to address these, climate challenges, and all the cities actually face with these challenges, even if the smaller ones, the villages and smaller cities, mid-sized cities, large cities, mega cities like Istanbul, and their territories, regions that Mr. Vegara has mentioned. So, what do you think? You're managing a very big cluster, smart city cluster in Spain, which includes many Spanish cities. So we assume that you have lots of experiences with your cities. So we wonder why and how was the smart city cluster born to address these sustainability and smart city related challenges?
Thanks a lot for inviting me, and thanks to share this table with two great experts like Naomi and Delia. And I will tell you how we create a smart city cluster, which is a national cluster that comprises the industry that is going to work together with the cities in order then to write their history for the future, to be more sustainable, to be more green, to be more circular. So I will tell you the history of the cluster that I think is pretty similar to any other country. Around 10 years ago, all the cities in Spain, we are more than 8,000 cities in Spain. So all of them realized that there was something what was called smart cities, and that has to do with them, not just with the big cities, Madrid, Barcelona, Bilbao, Malaga. All the cities have to change. So they realized they have to do something. And at that point, the industry realized that there is an opportunity in the cities. So they start to develop solutions and products for the cities. So a few entities from Andalusia in Spain realized that there was to do something to order what was going to go on the next years. So we decided to create a cluster to comprise all the knowledge that goes to the cities. So we start to identify in Spain the companies that were going to lead the different areas of a city to understand what they were going to propose to the cities. But of course, we want the companies to earn money because they are business. But they have to understand that they are not just provider. They have to work together and to collaborate with the cities. So, although we are an industry cluster, we have to get cities in our cluster because they are the ones who are going to show us what they need. So we could start that cluster. Now we have 10 years, nearly 10 years, and we have 220 companies and some universities, all of them working with the city. And we collaborate with the territories. For us, the biggest challenges are that there is a big distance between the city and the industry. Because the city has challenge, the industry has solution, but they are working on different sides. So what we pretend is then to get closer and to work together from the beginning. So if a city is making a planning strategy, they need to incorporate the industry when they are planning, because later the industry will provide the solution for that planning. But if we make the planning don't looking at the industry, and the industry made the product not looking at the city, what are we doing? So we are working for them to understand that this is not just a customer and a seller, that it is something which is collaboration, and they have to go together because they have to rewrite the future of our cities. And of course, we cannot forget the citizens because they are the main reason for what we are doing now. So we started a few years ago. It was not easy because companies didn't understand that the model has changed for them because most of them never work with cities. They work for the private industry. But now they work with the city. They have to understand how a city works. And of course, there is technology, and the data is something that is going to be part of our making decision. But we have to adapt the technology to the city. We don't have to arrive to the city selling without understanding what's going on in that city. Now we have learned a lot. It is important to keep on learning also from the cities. We also work in a way that the cities can share the experience, what they do well and what they do wrong, because it is important to share the best study case, but also what we did wrong, because other cities can learn and not lose time. So for us, the challenge is to get closer cities and industry, and then to go hand by hand for the construction of the future of the cities. And also we have seen that there is a lack of communication because cities are really doing great projects. They are really doing the best for the citizens, but the citizens sometimes do not understand why the city is taking that decision. So I think there is also a lack of communication for the citizens who at the end are the customers of our system. So we are also working with the industry to try to help the managers of the city to tell what they are doing in the way that we communicate. They have to use another way. They have to get closer also to the people to understand that this is something that all of us has to work together.
So, Veronica, thank you very much for your sharing your experience, why you needed to build up this smart city cluster in Spain. That's very valuable because you mentioned the involvement of all sorts of stakeholders, especially the role of the private sector involvement, the number of companies, the number of cities in your network. And in the second round, we hope to hear about your, Spanish experiences from your cities within part of your cluster. So building up a cluster, smart city cluster, smart and sustainable cities cluster is another way of working together and building up, working together and fight with the challenges together. It sounds easy, but it seems that it's not that easy, bringing all the stakeholders in the same platform. We might say that it might be a platform, it might be an urban forum, it might be in the form of a living lab, as Mr. Vegara mentioned. So it might be in the form of anything. But the idea, the model is to find a way to bringing all the stakeholders or urban stakeholders, but putting the citizens at the heart, at the core of the equation or the problem, and bringing all the stakeholders and trying to find the climate and sustainability, climate and smart solutions using technology is the key. It seems that the key that's the most is the skeleton of the maybe the challenge or the model. Okay, in the second round, thank you very much for your findings, your identifications about the challenges. So in the second round, we'll be very quickly, I'll be asking your ideas, your proposals regarding the solutions or potential solutions against the challenges that you have mentioned in the first round. Okay, Naomi. What do you think? What could be the potentials to overcome these challenges that you have mentioned in the first round?
As you said, there might be many solutions, but the solution that I came upon when I attended the World Urban Forum in 2012, I heard Dr. Joan Clos, who was formerly mayor of Barcelona, and he became the head of UN Habitat, which was the only UN agency that was prepared to use the word city, and I think that was because of him. And he then realized that talking about urban living at a global level wasn't really relevant, and he asked all the member states of UN Habitat to establish their own national urban forums. I was at that time deputy mayor, and I was very aware of the disconnect between local government, national government, and local government and its citizenry, whether active civil society or not. There were all these inbuilt disconnects, not to mention the lack of conversation between the commerce and the industry and the lack of relevance of academic work to city life, applying the results of academic research to actual living in cities. So I came back home from Naples from the 5th World Urban Forum and went straight to the Ministry of Building and Construction Israel and said, let's establish a national urban forum. And they said, we don't have time for that. We're too busy building and developing and doing all the things we have to do. So what happened in Israel, and I was happy to lead it, was that we set about establishing our national urban forum as an initiative of civil society. Currently, UN Habitat has, I think, 55 or 56 national urban forums, but we're the only one that is civil society backed. I found myself in Poland at the last World Urban Forum in June, sitting in a session of national urban forums with ministers and prime ministers, and there we were, our civil society initiative. But the issue is the same. The way we set about it was, every 2 years the World Urban Forum meets somewhere or other. This time it was Poland. And we said in the in-between years, we will have a conference in Israel, a convention for everyone who is concerned with what goes on in cities. And we decided to hold it in the city of Akko, which is a very interesting city. It's got a half Jewish, half Muslim, a small Christian population. It's a coastal city. It's a very historic city. It also has urban renewal. It has all the issues a city could possibly have. And I think from the Israel perspective, it's what we would call a medium-sized city. It was an interesting concept we heard in the presentation before. And everyone came. There were government ministries who sponsored it very happily, and urban representatives. But when you think, who are the people who are acting in a city, you suddenly realize it's everybody. And we had them all there. But I wouldn't say we've solved the problem, because although there is, and we had active civil society organizations, they were all talking to each other, but I have a funny feeling, and this last meeting that we had was in October 2021. It was considered very successful. There were representatives of UN Habitat. They all praised us. They said, this is wonderful. And I explained in Poland, yes, we're all talking, but is anyone listening? And that issue of not only talking, but also listening, that's called a conversation. It's a very simple human concept, but I think the only solution, and I think the format of an urban forum is one format, there may be many others, are places where people really get round the table and talk to each other in order to resolve the issues and in order to think together, because true innovation comes from thinking together. Not individuals doing different things in different corners, and a new idea came out of this. And the new idea is that it's not enough to have a national urban forum. Every city deserves its own urban forum. But the difference between an urban forum, or a local urban forum as we would call it, and all the other urban organizations and networks that we have, is that there should be a government commitment to support the urban forum, because as we said, if we go back to the COP, national goals cannot be met without cities managing to do their bit, because everyone is in the cities and the pollution is in the cities. And as was said, cities have been perceived as the problem, but they should be the solution.
Thank you very much, Naomi, for sharing your potential solutions against the challenges that you mentioned in the first round. As you said, building up national urban forums and also city-based or local-based urban forums is a wonderful way of bringing all the stakeholders, urban stakeholders, together and to fight with the, finding the solutions, climate-related solutions. But you mentioned the importance of the involvement of government. I mean, government institutions and government agencies to support these actions, even if, the city-level urban forums or national urban forums identify the top challenges, top priority challenges, if the government agencies or the decision makers, maybe we can round decision makers don't support it, it's not backed. If they're not backed, those actions are not backed, then, as you said, eventually it will be in the form of talking and nice conversations, writing nice reports, strategy reports, roadmaps, or action plans. But they need to be supported. Government institutions' involvement is very critical and need to be implemented in the field, right?
Indeed, but I suppose in a new world order that we may be entering into, where cities and industries and digital communities are the top players, perhaps industry could play a major role as well. It could be a very interesting scenario because they're also functioning and their products are being used in cities, and we want our green building to happen in cities. And cities have the worst carbon footprint, and we need to have a positive one.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And with the industrial focus, sectoral focus, I would kindly ask Delia to share her ideas about these sectoral or industrial focus. Delia, as you know, 3 critical emission sectors we should not be thought of separately are transport and mobility, energy supply, and the built environment. So this is why, because due to their interdependencies and impact on net zero, right?
Yes.
Great. Sorry.
I will bring the perspective from UK and then from Brussels. In fact, we are talking in UK about clean growth. Decarbonization, we grow, and by 2050, the ambition is carbon neutral. Everything is zero emission. And up to 2030, low carbon, and we start in some sectors to check the neutrality. So this is UK. In Europe, we have Green Deal, and the entire strategy of European Commission is divided in 5 missions. And these missions are cancer, which is health. so citizen-centric. And in fact, everything is citizen-centric in Brussels and in London. Then it's mission soil and food. Then it's mission water and ocean. Then you have climate adaptation. And then you have mission cities. So everything happens and tested in terms of neutrality in places and in cities. Going back to UK, 8 years ago, at government level, knowing that UK is very ambitious in decarbonization, they want to lead the agenda, which is a positive way, but also Brussels, we want to be the leaders worldwide in terms of showing the pathway, but then firstly, we have to test it. So one of the solutions is testing solutions, and then learning by doing, and then refining them till you get to your target. So 8 years ago, Department for Transport set up a program on decarbonizing mobility. And you'll see, I will explain the program, everything is related to energy, but very cleverly shaped. Because we are talking about sectors, but in fact it's energy related. So you need to have local-based solutions in energy, and I'll get back to this. So this program was divided in different parts of the country, and it worked on energy, and the key players were the key stakeholders, end users, so energy, local government, academia, researchers, small and medium enterprise. What I like in UK is that they put a lot of money in research and implementation, and then they save money and they have the best solutions in the market. I have examples in Europe where research is not very well thought. They said, okay, we have this German solution, let's test it, and we see how it works. The implementation of solutions is extremely important in cities because each city has their own identity. And you have the culture of citizens. So you cannot impose some solutions in UK. They don't go well in Central Eastern Europe because of this culture, because of behavior change, because of acceptance. So, exactly, we have to consider this anytime when we are talking about solutions, because if we impose now in an era, digital era, they will not catch up, This technology, for instance, for me, is going too fast, and citizens are trying to catch with jobs, and several other impactful aspects of life. So this program in UK was on in Cardiff, so in different regions of UK on electrification of vehicles, freight in London. So decarbonizing freight is a huge, huge problem, and it's worldwide. Jet fuel in Birmingham, so aviation, how can we decarbonize aviation because it's a global aspect, and fuel is very, they have very limited solutions, including electrification, only small aircraft can do it. Hydrogen in Newcastle and Durham. So 8 years ago, UK was thinking, okay, we need to think about the value chain of hydrogen and how are we going to use it? In what sector? Is it more for buildings, for heating, or for mobility? Because mobility, we know, is very difficult, and transport itself to be decarbonized. And then we had integrated low-carbon solutions for Leeds, so in north part of UK, where we discussed different scenarios, how to implement mobility as a service, how to include citizens, how to obtain data, and behavior change. After these solutions, they developed centers of competencies that worked with cities. So this knowledge is implemented city by city, and is tested. And then, of course, you have knowledge, and when we're talking about meetings in other parts of the world, it's knowledge transfer. For me, it's not entirely British knowledge transfer. It's lesson learned by UK citizens or UK experts, and implementation is also local knowledge transfer. It's a two-way. And as part of this implementation of solutions, UK has created in 2012 the Catapult family. So some small innovations catapult, you see, it becomes bigger, and then it goes to the market. So innovation towards demonstrators, and then market solutions and creating jobs. Because one of the main problem is not to decarbonize and get people out of jobs. So we go hand in hand with creating green jobs and training people. So this catapult family was created around different topics: medicine discovery catapult, semiconductor catapult, digital catapult, transport systems catapult, and future cities catapult. After 5 years, we realized, I was part of transport systems catapult when we had a project here, and we realized that transport and mobility without cities has no sense. And now we joined these two catapults, and we are part of Connected Places Catapult. As part of this catapult, we created a framework to decarbonize cities, so mobility and buildings. And this framework was tested in UK, and personally I tested in Romania, sponsored by British Embassy in Bucharest. And the implementation, again, convinced me that the solutions in cities belong very much to the city's spirit, city's flavor. So this framework had 8 pillars. The first was policy, decarbonization, governance, who is responsible for what, human factor, human resources. You need trained people. You need to understand when you implement solutions, and in companies, because in fact, this framework was designed towards industry, towards municipalities, to work together and implement to reach the decarbonization goal. And the fourth pillar was finance. So you need finance. And then innovation, you need to identify innovations.
Yeah.
And we realized several cities in Central Eastern Europe and in Western part of Europe, they had these innovation centers. But when they talked about innovation, it was IT solutions. So IT is not an innovation, it's a service.
Delia, sorry for interrupting you. Maybe we can, in the third round, maybe we can share the rest of your
of the pillars. It's just that it works very, very well. So in conclusion, you're right. Yeah. In conclusion, it's lesson learning by doing, best practices implementing in different cities, and take care of the spirit of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you mentioned a couple of, very, that things, parameters that we should highlight in the solutions, part of the solutions. One of them is learning by doing, implementing the projects, starting from smaller steps like proof of concept projects or pilot projects. Once they're successful, then increasing the scale and disseminate it to a larger scale and disseminate the solution to further scales. So learning by doing is one of the keywords, is one of the most success criteria. And the second one is the culture, as you mentioned, the lifestyles. So if you have a solution, then you can adapt it. If you have a solution in UK, in London, for instance, then it doesn't necessarily to have the same success in other cities. So the culture and the life size is another important parameter, and also the interdependencies between among the industries and sectors, like built environment, energy, and smart mobility. As you mentioned, you have lots of experiences in Catapult in UK. Catapult itself is another success story in terms of its organization, as it brings all of the stakeholders, especially the private sector companies, and also government organizations, NGOs, and universities. So thank you very much. In the final tour, Delia will be kindly asking your solid proposal. You have lots of experiences, catapults and European Union, in European Union countries and UK. So we'll have a solid 1-2 sentences for solid proposals as call to actions, okay? Thank you. So Veronica, since you have addressed why Smart City Cluster was born in Spain, and you shared your experiences regarding the structure of the Smart City Cluster. So, in your view, what could be the potential smart and sustainable solutions to, fight with the climate change or climate crisis, overcome these challenges, by giving examples from your cities in the field? So, we would kindly asking you your experience in the field, what sort of, success stories or best practices you have in your cluster.
Thanks. As we are a cluster who has many industry, we know a lot of solutions, a lot of products. So we have a huge catalog of solutions. But we have to understand that the city now are data. So the smart cities bring data for making decisions. So we need data, and there are many different solutions to measure data. Since we are in a construction forum, I would like to explain a few projects where the buildings are the sensors and where the buildings are the main reason for taking a decision in a city. So as you know, a smart city works. We take data from different places, we clean those data, and then we take decisions. So something which is in our cities are the buildings, and they are not going to be moved. So why don't we use the buildings as sensor, and we see what's going on and how a building contribute to the climate change, to the sustainability of a city. So now in Spain, we are, the national government gave some funds for 8 projects, pilot projects, where different cities, the ones should offer more than 150 buildings, are going to use the buildings as sensors to know what's going on in the city, not inside. We know that the building has to be sustainable, and we have to work inside, not how the building make the day-by-day city. So they include airports, museums, schools, housing, just to say what's going on. So it is a project which is being performance, and it is just to see how important the buildings are as part of the smart cities development. And then, thanks to the next generation funds, in Spain, all the cities around 5,000 inhabitants have to identify an area where they're going to work to be zero emissions. So now they are getting funds, and each of them are doing from different point of view, but all of them have the same proposal, is to have an area in the city where there is no emission. And most of them are closing the street to the traffic. Most of them are getting new materials for them to absorb the emission. But the main proposal is people to find a way where they can be healthy. So, as you know, we have not so much time. I could share many other solutions and examples, but I think that we can keep on the next question.
The next round. Thank you very much for your sharings regarding your experiences in Smart City Cluster of Spain. So let me wrap up the things in the first round and the second round, and try to summarize the highlights that you have mentioned. In the first round and second round, we've tried to explore and discuss the critical aspects of making our cities, towns, and communities livable and truly for everyone when dealing with climate change. And the future sustainability of the world is quite interlinked with the resilience of our cities and the well-being of urban communities, right? And we've listened existing challenges and related solutions with a sort of a top-down approach with 3 levels. At the top level, the importance of citizen-centric, smart, and sustainable governance, which requires the engagement of all urban stakeholders in the process to making the urban life, urban public domain safe, healthy, and green for all the residents have been emphasized. And it might be in the form of urban forums, living labs, or smart city cluster. It might be in the form of anything. But the main mentality, idea, and the approach is quite similar to each other, right? Inclusion of our youth, underrepresented populations, to ensure that our transition to a sustainable future is just and equitable for all, for most of the vulnerable ones, right? We need to ensure a just transition to a sustainable future. Have you said? I mean, do we agree on all of these? Okay. At the middle level, that was the top level. At the middle level, we've seen the existing challenges and potential solutions with Delia's comments and experiences with industrial and sectoral insight regarding the decarbonization of our cities and towns. So we looked at the three critical emission sectors, which should not be thought of separately, which are transport, mobility, energy supply, and built environment. And this is due to their interdependencies and impact that they create on net zero, right? And yet these three sectors continue to be planned for, delivered, and also unfortunately funded in silos, separately. So this is one of the most important challenges, and today we see a very fragmented, slow-paced planning systems. So we need an integrated, very integrated, to-the-point planning systems, and design and manage our cities to meet these net zero targets. And at the third and the last level, at the field level, with Ms. Veronica's comments, we look at the interventions that have been linked to the challenge of cities to join urban development, and also technology to make low emissions, right? And mainly on the urban centers, as you mentioned, and how the industry have developed different products and services to meet these challenges. So you have also mentioned the learning by doing experiences, starting from smaller steps, start with an POC or a pilot implementation, and increase the scale, of course, by measuring the processes, the projects, or the programs that we've been implementing, and then increase the scale and test it again, increase the scale and disseminate it to larger scales, right? And these three stages, through a top-down approach, including challenges and actions, also applies for Turkish smart and sustainable cities market. Let me very briefly share with some highlights from Turkish smart and sustainable cities market. It's also a growing market in Turkey, and maybe it could be good to share the market size based on a study that we had done last year. It was a research study. It was at the national level. Our smart and sustainable cities market is expected to be around $1,750 billion in 2024, while 1/3 of it belongs to energy, water, and buildings. This was one of the top most important findings of our report. And according to World Bank's recent study, climate action could provide nearly $150 billion in savings for Turkey in 2040. And if it takes naturally effective and appropriate actions to boost resilience, mitigate economy-wide emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So Turkey has a very, very high focus on energy efficiency and very ambitious targets for next year and further. So Turkey plans to lower its primary energy consumption by 14%, and annual carbon dioxide emissions by 66 million tons, preparing $11 billion for energy efficiency by next year. So one final thing about Turkey, buildings is about buildings. Buildings account for 1/3 of Turkey's energy consumption, and energy consumption and built environment are the two promising subsectors in Turkey. So by built environment, let me explain what I mean by a built environment. It includes the buildings we live in, the distribution systems that provide us with water and electricity, and the roads, bridges, and transportation systems we use to get from city to city or place to place. So this was a very short summary of the Turkish smart and sustainable cities market. So in our final tour, very shortly, I'll be asking our valuable panelist speakers about their, very solid proposals, call to actions. What should we do based on our discussion in this panel? So, Naomi, what's your call to action proposal? Just one or two sentences.
My call to action, based on the magic number of 5. I propose that 5 countries that are members of Zeynep's network should participate in an experiment, and that in each of them, in the first year, 1 local urban forum should be established with the support of the government and of industry and of everybody. In the second year, 2 should be established. In the third year, 3 more should be established, or 2 more, then we'll have the magic number of 5. In the 5th year, we will hold a conference together of all the experimental cities to see whether having those local urban forums has actually made a difference and helped the conversation and helped reach all the wonderful solutions that you're all talking about and we all need in order to survive as the human race. That's my proposal, and I can offer my city, Jerusalem, as a candidate where we have an active consortium of civil society working with the city and working with the government. So perhaps you have a city in Turkey to offer too.
Thank you, Naomi. Yeah, we took already. Thank you, Naomi, for your proposals. So, Delia,
Okay, so my suggestion is focus on renewable energy solutions, local-based solutions. And these solutions, solar and waste to energy. This is coming and we'll discuss in Sharm el-Sheikh. Every city has this potential, and I'm happy to discuss with those interested. We're already starting in Europe in some cities to test, including waste to energy, which will create a lot of benefits, and then it goes back to circularity, including for construction industry. So I'm happy to be involved in different case studies on implementing this decarbonization for cities with the existing renewable energy solutions. If you don't have wind, solar, definitely, and waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia, for your proposals. And Veronica?
So my call to action goes to the people. If we want to create smart cities, we need smart people, we need smart leaders, we need smart citizens. We are people, all of us as experts on cities. So we are going to create our city. So my call to action is that we have to train people from the youngest, and we have to learn them that technology needs peoples, because if we have technology, we do not have cities. So my call to action is that we have to create on people, and we have to work on the talent, because we need smart people for the smart cities.
Thank you. Thank you for your sharings and proposals. So before closing the session, let's look at the predictions for the coming years very shortly. We have a second video. İkinci videoyu rica edebilir miyiz acaba? it is hard to foresee, to predict the future, as BBC Future puts it. There are futuristic science fiction plans such as self-contained structures like city in a building. Maybe we'll live in city-sized buildings in the future, who knows? So, one final word about our session. The countdown has already started, and everyone has responsibilities within this crisis, from large corporates to the individuals. So, yes, we have enormous challenges, as you have mentioned, ahead, but we have hopes, right? Do we have hopes? I'm asking my speakers, do we have hopes? Yes, we have hopes. So we are committed and we are in. So are you also in? Are you also in? Okay, let's work together to build a better, sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz Sayın Berrin, Benli'ye ve değerli konuşmacılarına. Alkışlarla uğurluyoruz sizleri efendim. Thank you very much.